Welcome to the Tailwind Marketing Podcast, where we talk to IT marketing leaders about how to drive more sales. Hosted by Carlos Corredor, founder of Condor, an Inc. 5000 company and one of the fastest growing IT marketing agencies in the US.
3, 2, 1, 0.
This episode is brought to you by Condor, a digital marketing agency for mid-market IT companies. Most IT marketing teams struggle to drive sales, overwhelmed by long sales cycles and an elusive audience. Condor helps you measure and generate a qualified pipeline, make the most with your budget, and finally get executive recognition. You can learn more at condoragency.com. In today's episode, we have with us our guest is Clay Tuten. Clay is the CMO of Keymark, a provider of business process automation software for large enterprises. They've been on several lists of the fastest growing companies in the US, including 4 times in the Inc. 5000. So welcome, Clay. And please tell us a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, thanks for having me. The joy to be on your podcast. Have kind of a mixed background. Graduated, got a degree in graphic design back. I'm an old guy. So back in the day when there was no web or any of that kind of stuff, and kind of have lived in that transition of true digital transformation. Everybody likes to talk about that. But I'm one of those Gen Xers that has one foot in, kind of the analog world and then in the digital world. And remember, having to call in on a phone or even dialing it with the old school stuff that most kids wouldn't even know these days. But went to college, got a degree in art and design, followed that track into agency life, did agency time, and then stepped away from that to start my own business. Started that in the apparel industry. We were into the extreme sports side, and we were an apparel manufacturer and supplied a lot of competition. Paintball actually was in the paintball industry, so it's kind of a very niche area. That was when paintball was really coming on. Learned a lot from that. Went into working with another agency, kind of partnered in with them after the business. After we ended the business, went into back into the design world, and started another company with another friend, and parlayed that into a 6-year stint with ESPN. So I worked for ESPN for 6 years, contracted with them doing design, web, photography, video, whole bunch of stuff. And then moved into the heavy corporate world, real corporate world for a few years. And then that brought me to now I'm with Keymark. So yeah, kind of a eclectic past, and it's good because it helps me draw from a lot of different experiences, and I find that to be an advantage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at least to me, what happened is I worked in a couple of agencies, but really until I started my own agency and business, it definitely changed my perspective on how I saw not only my business, but also how to tackle challenges when they come up, So I wanted to talk a little bit about that, right? How do you think your perspective on things and your approach to challenges in general is different after having that entrepreneurial exposure and experience?
It provides some empathy for those around you. When you are an entrepreneur, it's you end up having to be especially early on, you have to be kind of all things to all people. You're in the finance side, you're in the marketing side, you're in the, all the different aspects of run operations, et cetera. And as you grow, you understand what it takes to run those areas of the business. And it gives you an appreciation for people who are specialists in those areas. Taught me early on to leverage people that are smarter than me to run the areas of the company that I may not be as gifted in, right? And just knowing that you have to put your trust in other people. And hiring well is so important. And when you have to turn some of that responsibility over, it can be a little scary, right? One thing I learned, a big takeaway from that business, was the danger of over diversification. Just to kind of throw that out there as a very specific thing that I learned. We got into some trouble by trying to do too many things. And I think in a world where we're seeing a shift from this specialization and the value of specialization. Hey, you're really good. You're a deep diver on, say, SEO. There's if you look at a job description for most places, while they say they want somebody really smart in SEO, they want somebody who has a more wide background, right? And sometimes if you over diversify yourself, even in your own experience or in your own business, you're trying to do too many different things. If you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And that can get, you can really get yourself into trouble. So that brought some unique perspective for me, having owned my own business. And now that I work for somebody else, I know the worries that my CEO has at night when he goes to bed. Right. I can empathize with those. And when I'm listening to him give us direction on here's where we want the company to go, I'm able to better understand where he's coming from and understand what's driving him. And that's so critical in any situation, whether we work with other people, is to know where those folks are coming from, know where the person on the other side of the table is coming from when they're trying to communicate to you their goals, their aspirations, their needs, et cetera. So there's a lot I could go into, but those are a few points I think that I took away from owning my own company.
Yeah, I think I remember when I was, right out of college, and it's usually, and I think naturally, the junior team is always, let's say, second guessing or criticizing the executive decisions, that end up affecting them one way or another. They're always saying, they should have done this. Why didn't they do that, right? And to some degree, that happened to me as well. I always tried to give them the benefit of the doubt, because I knew that starting a business and growing a business wasn't easy, even though at that moment I hadn't tried it myself. But I never really had the same approach to solve challenges, to maybe offer an alternative, to say, okay, if we cannot do this, then what can we do? Then how do we get creative? Because this is a problem that needs to be solved. We cannot simply pretend it's not happening, because definitely the business is going to be affected. So I think that if I would go back to working for somebody else today, I would do a couple of things very differently that would really change my performance and my contribution, to that. And it's not that I regret, because it's not about regretting, but definitely, that's really why I wanted to talk about this, because I don't know. I mean, and not everybody has a chance, right, to go at it and start their own business and work for their own for a few years before going back to the corporate world. So what would you say to those folks that they haven't had that opportunity to maybe some tricks or advice or mindset shift that they can do to be the best they can be at their current roles?
That's a big question. That's a big question with a lot of possible answers. I'll kind of hone in on the word humility. It takes a lot of humility when you're trying to do things on your own, to reach out and ask for help. And sometimes we feel like we need to prove that we can do this on our own. That entrepreneurial spirit is great, but it can be dangerous. If we try to do everything on our own, you can't be all things. At times you may have to, like I mentioned earlier, step into different roles, but reaching out for help, putting yourself in places with good mentors, finding people that surrounding yourself with people who have already done it, and really reaching out and making those connections, gleaning from those that have tried and failed, And by the way, that's not a bad thing, right? Just because you didn't build $100 million company or bigger or whatever, it doesn't mean you failed. So reach out to people who have succeeded. And I guarantee you, if they've succeeded, they've also probably failed. There's just no way that you're going to succeed and not have some failure. So don't be afraid to fail. That's so important. You've got to try new things. And if you don't, you're just going to get stuck in the status quo. So yeah, surround yourself with people who are smarter than you, and don't try to do it yourself, and make sure that you're connecting with people who can give you that wisdom and help you through.
Yeah, you mentioned failing and knowing, how to learn from that and continue to grow, and really what you refer to as failing as a marketing strategy, right? I always have seen it. I remember somebody that one of the account managers in the agency that I used to work with, she said, hey, we're not doing open heart surgery, right? Like we're launching a marketing campaign, and if it doesn't work, we'll adjust and life will continue, So that's stuck in my mind because, I think a lot of us in marketing, obviously we take our job very seriously and are very competitive, but at the same time, it's important to understand that, right? That it's more, similar to the entrepreneurial world, where you have to push forward and try different things. Otherwise, you're never gonna grow your company, your team, your etc. Right? But how exactly, do you go about this, and do you encourage your team to go about this? Because obviously I'm sure you developed some sort of strategy around it or structure to that learning process.
Yep. Yeah, we the open heart surgery comment's great. I've always heard it said nobody's going to die, right? It's at least not in marketing. We're not doing brain surgery. We're not trying to save somebody's life. That doesn't diminish that we're doing something important. I mean, the return on our efforts should be there. We don't get up and do marketing just for the fun of it. I mean, we want to drive business. That's the whole point of doing marketing. So I have recently published in Forbes.com an article specifically around making failure as a part of your marketing strategy. And what I mean by that is not seeking out failure, right? It's making space for it. So most people are familiar with Thomas Edison's quote, right? He said, I didn't fail. I just found 10,000 ways that didn't work when he was inventing the light bulb. And marketing, it's a little different, right? But the concept is still there. If you're not trying, you're not failing, you're probably not trying. And so I have a couple rules with my team. One is, if we're going to fail fast, and we're going to fail forward. Fail fast, fail forward. So if we know we're going into this with the risk of it not working, we don't necessarily have data behind it already, if we're going to try something new, then we need to make sure that we're not just going to keep doing this and prolong the pain. We need to have some sort of structure built in that we know, okay, that's it. Like, we're going to hit this threshold, and if it hasn't succeeded by this point, then we're going to pull, and we're going to go a different direction. Now, there's certain things you don't want to toy with, right? In the article I mentioned, it's not a good idea to try to pack your parachute a different way than what you normally do. That's not the time to test something, right? There are times when we are spending valuable money on a marketing campaign, and we don't need to be playing with that money. We need to know, based on our metrics, that this is a consistent success, right? We know we're going to get return out of this investment. So some of the areas that we look at, obviously, are areas where you can track with data. Old school marketing, and I've been, back in the day when you had ad spend, you're putting out a lot of magazine ads, you're putting out billboards, right? Old school style advertising, and this still exists. The trackability wasn't there. You might get metrics, right? There's first level metrics of X number of exposure based on traffic or distribution count of a magazine or whatever. But over the last 15 years in marketing, data has just been king. And we've kind of become, I hate to say the word slaves, but just really kind of handcuffed to that and afraid to do anything that doesn't have data behind it. And I think that's dangerous. And we can talk more about that, just around trying things that don't necessarily have metrics tied to them. But when you're testing something and you're trying to do something new, it does really help to have those metrics in place to tell you if you're working. Like we started working, taking a look at, I'll give you a perfect example. We started looking at here at Keymark in the marketing, how was our pay-per-click performing? Like, we were getting leads. We had results coming in. We would A/B test landing pages. That's not new to anybody. That's not just, nobody's going to walk away from that going, oh, I'm going to go A/B test. And most everybody in marketing knows what A/B testing is. But we had to look beyond what looked like on the surface success. And those leads, while they were coming in, were not ultimately turning into closed won, or not enough of them, at least. And so I gave my team permission and a budget. I need you to go try different things, try different platforms, try different ad groupings, all these different things, figure this out. And you can fail, but we need to fail towards success. Find out what we need to do. And ultimately, it could lead you to say, well, maybe we shouldn't even be participating in this area, right? And so that's what I mean by being calculated with your failures. You don't want to just go in and go, we'll try this and we'll try that willy-nilly. No, you need to have some plan behind it and have some structure behind it.
Yeah, I think it's important you can see it as I don't know if you can see it as diversifying your investment, but also doing more than what's working today. A lot of things, I saw a lot of companies going all in on Google Ads 10, 15 years ago, and that's okay, right? Because that was proven that it had the highest ROI. There were not that much competition for each click, so maybe the visits were costing you $5, $10 instead of $50 today, and there were not that many competitors in the space, right? But then if you didn't have part of your budget, I don't know if it's 40% or 5% or somewhere in the middle, but at least part of it to try new things. So let's see how LinkedIn works. Let's see how programmatic works. Let's do some videos and test that out, right? Then today, if paid search was all you did for the last 10 years, and now is that you're starting to trial, you're behind your competitors in that end. So I totally see that.
Yeah, we did that too, Carlos. We went LinkedIn, and there's multiple ways to work in LinkedIn, whether it's in mail or direct. There's several ways that you can leverage LinkedIn. And just be frank, none of them worked. None of them worked for us. Now, I have friends who it works fantastic for. Now, when I say it worked, I want to emphasize this. I see this happen a lot in marketing. And I think there's that level of success that appears to be success when ultimately it's not. Like, we were getting really good leads. I mean, we had the exact ICP that we wanted. We had the perfect person, the right decision maker, right? We're responding, we're connecting with our ads, but at the end of the day, they were not ready to buy. They were what I would call, tire kickers, right? There was no intent. There was curiosity, but there was no intent. And when I'm spending that much money, I need to know that I have an opportunity. Like, if you want to hear from me, tell me you want to hear from me, right? Otherwise, I'm just blowing that money. So that success on one level looked good. Hey, we're getting all these leads in. Our CPL looked pretty good. But really, when you got down to where we were closing a deal or passing those along to sales as an SQL, wasn't there.
No, totally. And yeah, you also mentioned measuring, the channels that you're obviously the channels that you're running, and making sure that when to give up, essentially, right? But beyond that, talking a little more broadly about measurement, KPIs, there's also a balance, right? And we're talking before the podcast on the creative aspect of it. And I think, especially for mid-market companies and SMBs, you're not going to have millions and millions of dollars to test things, right? And also, you're not going to have a team of data scientists to really know what's the quote statistically significant or not, right? So a lot of times you just really have to go with your gut a little bit on when to test something a little bit further, when to know maybe it's not the channel, maybe it's not the agro, maybe it's just the message, right? When to maybe step up your creative game, right? So how do you see that balance between the creative part and the data-driven part, and any insights or advice on how to balance those two?
Well, budget and bandwidth are two big things, right? So when I say bandwidth, that can mean human capital that you have, like what's your head count? And I think that's where reaching out to an agency, right, Condor or some other provider, to really leverage that outside resource to help you, can be a huge asset. That's so, I would say that's always a consideration, especially for SMBs. And we outsource. We have a pretty small team. We run pretty lean, but we work hard. But we leverage and outsource some of the areas where we aren't as strong. From a creative standpoint, one of the challenges is to not allow your creative to overshadow your good marketing. And what I mean by that is you can come up with great ideas all day long, but they may not be good ideas ultimately, right? And some of those aren't always trackable. You and I were talking about that earlier, right? Where maybe you do run just general ads, try a billboard for a change, doing something different if you're trying to reach local or even into another particular market. Trying new ways of branding. And I think that's there's a lot of experts out there talking about this right now, is just the branding side has kind of gotten lost in the data side. Everything's got to have data behind it, but marketing is relational. It is so relational, and you have to build that relationship with your customer or your leads, right? And if you, like, the first rule of marketing, I always say, is they have to know you exist. Like, if people don't know you exist, you're not going to get anywhere with them. So knowing that you exist and connecting with them, and that's not done through emails. That's where social media is so powerful. So whether you hire an influencer or you do it yourself, create your own podcast, right? But I always say, if you build it, they will not come. That just because you go out and make a great podcast doesn't mean they're going to listen to it. We have a podcast. It doesn't mean people are going to listen to it. You may have social influencing out there, but it doesn't mean they're going to listen to it. So you have to differentiate yourself. And again, that is, you can track that, right? That's the great thing about social media. You can see your interactions and everything, and you can have that relationship. So it's not just about telling people about your product. I think that's a danger that most marketers fall into, is starting with their product instead of starting with the person, starting with the problem and the pain point of the person you're trying to connect with. And so that sometimes is, it requires stepping out and doing something a little different. And I think that's where marketers have lost their way a little bit. They've gone so much into the digital marketing world, that they've forgotten just about telling the story of the customer and how you can engage with them and creating that relationship.
Yeah, I think copywriting and having some experience in the, let's say, traditional advertising world, the Leo Burnett type of environments, the Super Bowl, and how those back in the day, how that the process for that creativity came about. And today is completely the opposite, right? You have anybody on the marketing team doing copywriting just because they know the technical aspects of the product. and I think again, it's a lost, copywriting is a lost art, and especially now with AI, and you just using it at the basic level, just telling ChatGPT something without giving them context of your company, of the challenges of your audience. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and it's so challenging with all of those technologies to come up with great copy, especially for a B2B and IT services company. But at the same time, there's so much opportunity, because if you do it right, you will connect with that audience that is tough to get to, right? But your competitors are probably not doing that great either, right? So if you do that first, I think there's a huge opportunity there.
And that's a trap too with the AI piece, the AI hype trap, as I call it. Especially with generative, like marketing. I mean, the opportunities for marketing to leverage AI is fantastic. But where I see the first mistake is loss in brand voice. It becomes so they trust it implicitly. And you've got to have, is what we call here in Keymark, is we're technology, automation, software would deal with AI. AI drives a lot of our capture technology, but there's a human in the loop. That's the term we use. And if you allow that AI to replace you, you've already lost. It is a good tool. It's a good asset to have. It's gotten me out of, over the hump creatively a lot of times. But so often you see loss of brand voice when they start using an AI. Now, it'll be interesting to watch. You can train ChatGPT, and I've even created our own GPT for our company through OpenAI, and you can train it, and it's pretty cool. So we'll see how that goes. I think there's still, the jury's out on how good the AI is going to get. But as for now, we have to be in control of our own brand, and using it as a tool is great. Using it as a replacement, no, dangerous.
Yeah, and that's an area that I wanted to ask you as well. I think you, on one side, you are the CMO of the company, right? So obviously you have the mindset of a marketing leader that needs to grow the business, right? But you also, because of what you guys do, you guys provide software and a value-added reseller of different automation tools and softwares, right? So you have the knowledge, right? So when you combine those two, you have an unfair advantage of other CMOs that are trying to get on the AI and automation, not bandwagon, because I don't think it's a buzzword. I think it's there to stay, and if you don't hop on it, you're gonna definitely fall behind, and your company's gonna fall behind, right? But what are some let's say areas of opportunity where you see not only for marketing but also for automation, robotic process automation, workflows, let's say the untapped areas or use cases that where marketing leaders today should be spending more time, developing and creating expertise around?
Yeah, so I'll kind of divide that into two very specific answers. One specific to marketing, and two kind of what we do and how AI truly is affecting enterprise business. So from a marketing standpoint, again, I kind of alluded to it. It's a tool. We leverage it in several different ways. We leverage it in our own, I'll give you a very specific example. So we use it to transcribe our podcast. That's not going to ruin your brand voice. That's just going to save you time. And it's getting better every day. And I'm sure you probably use the same thing. And a lot of tools like Zoom, and of course Microsoft has Copilot, and a lot of these large organizations are implementing it. You can go to Shutterstock and use their AI. Adobe has it built in. It's nuts what you can do inside of Adobe now. A lot of really cool reels out on TikTok and Facebook of designers who are showing you how to use the AI within Adobe products, for example. Really great. There's a lot of shortcomings, especially on the image generation side with marketing. We've done it to help us get over the hump. Hey, I'm looking for this kind of a style, and working with that. DALL-E, I'm not so crazy about it. Honestly, we've used some better, and I won't use any other names of companies, but the DALL-E really struggles with type and stuff like that. So I think kind of what I'm getting at is get in and play around with it. You know, the tendency is to have a hammer. You've heard that said, right? You have a hammer, everything's a nail. That's not what it's meant to do. But it's imperative that I think everybody start using it, because it's it's not going away. I would highly recommend, if you haven't read the book, The Coming Wave, definitely read that book. Will scare you, but also give you a lot of excitement too. It's definitely not going anywhere. So how are we going to use it? How are we going to leverage it? And marketing is an ongoing experiment, really. One of the dangers too, and I had another article in Forbes about this, is the legal side of things, and how you got to walk that line very carefully. You can get in trouble with using other content that doesn't belong to you. And then I've already alluded to some of the other issues that you may have with your own brand voice and being overly dependent on it. Switch gears to what we do, but the unfair advantage comment is funny, but fair too, because I see that hype train and people just jumping on it like crazy. So when people think AI today, they think generative AI, right? Chat GPT and all the rest. That's AI has been around for a while. So we've been leveraging AI for over 2 decades, specifically on the capture side. And what capture does is every business has data coming into their company. And that comes in different forms and usually in some sort of document. So maybe you have invoices, right? Most everybody has invoices. Depending on what vertical you're in, you're going to have different types. You have tax forms, contracts, right? There's lots of different data. Well, those come in both digital and paper form. How do you get them into your ecosystem? And then once they're in the ecosystem, what do you do with them from there? Well, most of the time, that's an individual having to look at that invoice, look at one screen, and then go enter it in on the other screen. There's not many people that I know. I've never met anybody that enjoys doing that. Data entry, whatever you want to call it, right? Nobody really wants to do that. And those people are valuable people. They can be doing things much more valuable to the organization than sitting there and typing in how much the person paid and how much they still owe because they didn't pay the entire invoice. So that's where we come in, and we extract that data. And AI now has the new AI, the new wave of AI, as we call it, with this intelligent data processing and data capture, is making the process so much faster and so much more accurate. So you get better accuracy, better speed, your time to ROI is significant. And I think most businesses out there are looking to how can we implement AI? It's the new thing, right? It's the hot topic. And really it's right there. It's already been there. And so for large businesses, and we're not into super, small business, over 100 million really is kind of our ICP in revenue, 100 million in revenue. Those organizations have a lot of opportunity that's already there in front of them. They're just not using it. And we find that most people are so focused over here on the generative AI that they're forgetting about the things that are actually able to save them money right now.
I completely agree. For us, for example, and we are pushing AI across our channels, paid search, marketing automation, paid social SEO, etc., right? And obviously with the goal of saving time or improving the quality, right? Those are essentially the two main benefits, right? And when I sit with the team, I remember, no, this is a tool that is amazing. It costs, it's expensive, but look at all of the, it's essentially, the new flashy thing, and it's like, why don't we just, for example, connect LinkedIn with Zapier to a spreadsheet, right? And then use a simple formula that says, okay, if the about of the company has either cloud or colocation or RPA, then we say, yes, this is our target company, And that's not, something,
That's science fiction. No, it's there. Yeah.
it's a spreadsheet formula with a simple integration, right? And let alone obviously going a step beyond that and going and using something like Blue Prism or UiPath, and that's really at the enterprise level, that's really powerful. But again, it's automating simple steps that today a human is doing. It's taking more time, costing more money, and it's also really more prone to error, right? So
right. And RPA too, most people don't know there's no robots involved. In fact, it's just software, and it's been around for a long time. But Blue Prism, and they recently got bought out, but Blue Prism kind of coined the term. And if you want to, do a study in marketing, that's a pretty good one, because they just took something that already existed, packaged it, and named it, and now it's this huge thing. And you have the UiPath of the world now that also realize that they can't just be an RPA shop. And if you look at UiPath, and they're one of our partners, they're expanding themselves into a full-fledged automation platform. It's pretty smart what they're doing. They're not just getting locked into RPA. They're moving into the AI realm. And of course, once you get that data in, you got to have a workflow behind it. Where is it going? What systems are going into your CRM, your ERP? What are we going to do with it once it's there? Who's approving this, right? If it doesn't get approved, where does it go? What happens if this happens? All these rules, and no human has to do that anymore.
Yeah. Clay, what else haven't we discussed that you think would benefit our audience to hear from you?
Yeah, that's another really good broad question. I think it's the thing that I'm learning is things are changing so fast. You really do have to stay up to speed. You have to be trying it. Don't just read about it. Go try it. Go do it. And I also see a lot of bad advice out there. I'm sure you do too, right? You watch a lot of marketing, or talking heads who are sharing, I'm an expert. And that worries me. I have a long history in this industry, and I've seen change happen. And I see messages being pushed out there, I think with good intent, by the way. I'm not painting ill will of any of these folks. I think they believe what they're saying is right. But so often when somebody's on the other side of a camera, right, or a microphone, and they say something, and this goes for everything, marketing, politics, you name it, the whole gamut. The danger is to go, oh yeah, and I'm going to go quote that, and I'm going to go use that. Test it. Go find out what somebody else is saying. I saw one of my kids, my youngest is my creative one in the family, and she was watching a design video. This guy's going and redesigning logos, and they were terrible. And I'm going, no, I'm like hollering at the screen. That is not what don't do that. Those are terrible. So that's just a small example of how I think it's dangerous for us to, like, just because we've talked about it doesn't mean it's gospel. Somebody should go try it, right? And it's all about informing yourself and then going and testing it and trying it, and then making that opinion on your own. Don't just go take some for gospel and then go do it.
Yeah, no, the fake news of marketing, huge challenge, especially when you're trying to innovate. You're trying to see, okay, who are the thought leaders here? And it's just 1,000 thought leaders, and yeah, but as you mentioned, under what context did it work for them, and what are they offering? Like, what's the reason to promote? Do they have an agenda behind it? And any advice on how to recognize, other than test things, how to recognize the real thought leaders versus the ones that don't apply, let's say.
Results. I mean,
yeah.
The old guys don't necessarily have it. I got gray in my beard, been around for a while. That doesn't mean that I'm necessarily smarter, but got results. I can give you data on things that worked and didn't work. I can tell you why they didn't work. I can tell you, like, my first business failed. Like I learned a lot from that failure. We talked about the business earlier, but it ultimately we was doing pretty well, and then it wasn't. So youth isn't bad either. Just because you're young doesn't mean you're not smart. So I think that to help differentiate that, you need to go look at the results. Just because somebody has a channel,
Yeah.
doesn't mean that they can, that's why you have on your website, I have on my website, stats, testimonies, right? You've been there, done that. Here's the results we got. That's why you can trust what I say. So I think that would be my number one advice. Just go find the results. And if they don't have it, maybe go look somewhere else.
And in the world of marketing, and in particular B2B marketing, any thought leader that is, let's say, test and proven for you, that you trust in, that you would recommend? Either author, thought leader, even like a book?
Wow. So yeah, there's a lot of them out there. I don't tend to just go towards one individual. I do know that there's a guy that I follow online called Brand Boss HQ, I think is his channel. He's been around. He's a brand heavy guy, very much into that. He's got some really good content. You definitely read books. I mentioned The Coming Wave. That's not a marketing book. That's an AI book, but The Coming Wave is really good. Then in business wise, I read a lot of different books. So it's kind of hard to pick one of those. I've not been never have worshiped somebody, so to speak, like, oh, this is the holy grail, or this is the guru of marketing. I just love finding it from different locations, but those are some of the suggestions that I would have. Just that Brand Boss HQ he's really good. I like what he does. And then I have engaged with several others on social media who are specific within digital marketing. And I think that's a really good point I'll make really quick is a lot of times if you're watching a live reel or a live TikTok, get in there and interact with those marketing people, and you'll find out real quick if they really know what they're talking about. And then reach out to people like you who are doing this each and every day, and get the help that you need. If you don't know, don't be afraid to ask.
All right, Clay. Well, thanks a lot for being on the podcast. Great talking to you. And again, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Carlos. Appreciate you having me on. Have a good one. We'll talk soon.
All right.
Thanks for listening to the Tailwind Marketing Podcast. If you enjoyed it, remember to subscribe for future episodes. Until next time.